Hi everybody, coming at you from the couch with our next video lecture. This slide presentation is actually going to be split into two, if not three parts to kind of keep it chunked, not overwhelm us all at once. Highly recommend that you watch this video here. This is an amazing, it's not Mr. Betts, but it's an amazing spoof video to Lady Gaga's Bad Romance, but about women's suffrage. It's pretty tough. All right, let's get started. Women and the right to vote. This first lecture is going to take us from the 1800s pretty much to 1900 before the amendments passed. Again, I just want to point out to you a few videos that are always available for you to watch on your own. This is a really nice full review. This one is a shorter review, focused specifically on the 19th Amendment. This is going to take you into a longer approach. Where are we starting? Well, let's look at this promise of we the people. So African Americans, as we know, were left out of the We the People promise of the Declaration of Independence. But women, too, faced a long struggle for full citizenship rights. But unlike slavery, women's rights did not even seem to be an issue in the minds of the framers, meaning the people who wrote the Constitution. Traditional ideas about the role of women help to explain why most states denied them voting rights for many years. Long before the founding of our country, most people believed that women belonged at home caring for the family. You're probably familiar with this stereotype of what a woman's job is. A lot of these people believe that women were unable to handle many of the jobs that men performed. Large number of women, though, took factory jobs in the 1800s. Even though this kind of proved this bullet point wrong, right, that they couldn't do any factory work, laws still treated them differently from men. Some laws also allowed women to do only specific and usually low-paid jobs. People who held the traditional view disapproved of women holding political office or voting. They basically argued that politically active women are going to, bring about the apocalypse. Oh my God! They're going to upset family stability. They're going to abandon their families. They're less intelligent than men. If we're less able to make political decisions. That's my stank face for that. But that's the idea, right? That women just intellectually, biologically are inferior to men. That should be giving you a little bit of a deja vu vibe for what we were talking about with the biological arguments for African American inferiority. A lot of it is this faulty science that's really just being used to prop up these false cultural narratives. Okay. How do we start changing this view? By the late 1800s, people's views towards women began to change. Again, we talked about how women started taking more factory jobs. They took jobs and many became active in social and political issues, notably abolitionism. So that's that was the movement to abolish slavery. But soon, many women began to insist on the right to vote or suffrage. A declaration from the Seneca Falls Women's Rights Conventions in 1848 stated, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal." Yeah, we love that. This video here, this is a nice explanation of the Seneca Falls Convention. In the work I'm assigning for red and green groups, you guys will be going through some of the documents that came out of that convention. So I would recommend that you check out this video if you feel like what I'm saying doesn't explain it enough to you. Nonetheless, even though in 1848, right, this is pre-Civil War, they come out with this declaration asking for voting rights. But nevertheless, by 1900, only a handful of states had granted suffrage to women. So we're kind of bringing up our federalism here. In the early 1800s, again, from this convention, this is a document image of the people who signed the convention. A lot of women were involved in abolition, also temperance movements, no alcohol. This conference was led by Elizabeth Cady Stanton as well as Lucretia Mott. Conference attendees wrote the declaration. A couple things to point out. If we look at the gentleman who signed here, we've got Frederick Douglass down here. F. Dougs. He was a big supporter of women's suffrage. He didn't think it was as important as ending slavery, though. And this would have been at the time that he and Garrison had their big old beef, because I did scour the list, and he's not there. So I think that's why. Remember we talked about their like beef. So we kind of look at like what's been going on at the same time. Again, Seneca Falls Convention, but then also in 1871, African American men are given the right to vote. This disappointed many people. A lot of people thought that women and African American men would be enfranchised at the same time. What does that mean? It means that people thought that both groups would be given suffrage through the 15th Amendment. We know that that's not what happened. African Americans themselves were split over whether men should get the vote before women, right? Should we do all women, all white women, or should we do all African American men? Is there a combination? We know, however, that the 15th Amendment only enfranchised or gave voting rights to African American men. All right, we've got our boy, Frederick Douglass here. What up, Frederick? You guys, red and green groups, you guys are going to be looking at these quotes and kind of analyzing them. He says, when women, because they are women, are dragged from their houses and hung upon lampposts, when their children are torn from their arms and their brains dashed upon the pavement, then they will have an urgency to obtain the ballot to our own. And then asked, but was this not true for black women? Yes, yes, yes. It is true for the black woman, but not because she is a woman, but because she's black. So when I think about this quote here, I'm really thinking about like this is pretty reflective of the slavery experience in Douglass's eyes. And he's kind of saying like black women deserve the vote, not because they're women, but because they're black. That we need to look at the slavery issue first. Then we have Sojourner Truth, who is also an abolitionist. We didn't get to look too much at her. Sorry, Sojourner. She's super awesome. But she said, there is a great stir, like meaning commotion, there's a great stir about colored men getting their rights, but not a word about the colored women. And if colored men get their rights and not colored women theirs, you see, the colored men will just be masters over the women, and it will be just as bad as it was before. So she's looking at this as an equity issue as well, right? If colored women don't get the right to vote, what have we really even done? We've just created a new class of masters and slaves. So moving along, before 1910, we had the National American Women's Suffrage Association, or NAWSA. Don't think it's a Boston-based group. We have Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. This is Susan. You probably have heard about Susan B. Anthony. We have Elizabeth Cady Stanton and then Lucretia Mott, who was also one of the leaders at Seneca Falls. Basically, there's like two strategies here for these activists. We can either win suffrage state by state, so getting each state legislature to pass an amendment to their state constitutions to give women the right to vote, or we go whole hog, right, and we pass a constitutional amendment. But remember what we learned about how hard it is to pass amendments to the Constitution. Then we get the anti-suffragists. You guys are going to laugh pretty soon because I'm going to show you some images, some of their propaganda. Those who opposed extending the right to vote to women were called anti-suffragists. Many of these anti-suffragists were women themselves. Okay? Beliefs. Women are high-strung, irrational, and emotional. That can be true sometimes, but I know plenty of men who fit the same category. Women are not smart enough or educated enough. Women should stay at home. This last one, or the second to last one. Women are too frail. They will get tired just walking to the polling station. Like, what? And then also that women would become more masculine if they voted. So these are some of my favorites that I did a lot of research on these. Just some of the propaganda going against women's suffrage. We have a suffragette's home, right? Clearly this is like a horrible scene. We've got the kid on the ground, like nothing's being done. I don't know if that's like a cigarette in the lamp, but like clearly this is a bad situation. This poor man comes home after a hard day's work. Poor thing. Don't let those women vote. Right? The home-loving women do not want the ballot. Vote no. Right? So if you love your family, you don't want to vote. Kind of hard to choose between those two things. Where women vote, there is no rest. This is kind of this danger that if you give women political power, they're going to start controlling the men. We have a woman's mind magnified, right? Clearly, all she cares about are men, marriage, clothes, her baby. There's nothing in here about her ability to make political decisions, right? Origin and development of a suffragette. At 15, a little pet. At 20, a little croquette. At 40, not married yet. At 50, a suffragette. Oh my gosh, how will the world survive? There's going to be a lot of sarcasm in this lecture, as you could probably guess. So where do we go from here? People die, right? We kind of pass the torch. Caddy Stanton dies in 1902. Anthony Falls in 06. The movement doesn't die, though. A lot of these young middle-class women are still going to continue to join the suffrage movement. And a lot of working-class women also join the cause, hoping that the right to vote will help them improve their working conditions, these horrible sweatshop factory conditions. Two groups emerge. We have the original NWSA, I think I left an A out there, the NAWSA, but also a new group, the National Women's Party. During the 1800s and then the 1900s, again, the supporters gained the public's attention. These supporters are the suffragists. They march, they give speeches, they write to government officials and newspapers. Some will even go on hunger strikes. The National Women Party's allies proposed an amendment giving suffrage to women. Those were introduced but failed to pass in almost every session of Congress for 40 years. So for 40 years, every time Congress met, somebody was trying to propose this amendment and it didn't go anywhere. But the NAWSA in the background was continue to pursue a state-by-state strategy. So let's look at some of the leaders. We have Carrie Chapman. This is Carrie Chapman. She led the NAWSA. She believed in that careful state-by-state strategy, supporting President Wilson. We'll get to him later. Acting ladylike, don't embarrass the movement. Then we have Alice Paul. She led the National Women's Party. She believed in a more aggressive strategy. Focus on getting that constitutional amendment. Why waste time doing this little patchwork quilt of states when if we can get the Constitution amended, that'll apply for the whole nation. Her movement adopted lots of unladylike strategies that they had learned from British groups like heckling, politicians, picketing, really like taking up space and being seen. And Paul really refused to support Wilson if he wouldn't support women's suffrage. We're going to get to him in part 2 of this lecture series. So again, we've got Chapman with the NAWSA, and then we have Alice Paul with the NWP. Interesting to me, like in terms of like their tactics, she's definitely like an older woman, maybe like a little bit more of an elite woman. Let's keep it calm. Let's just go state by state. Don't do anything unladylike. Whereas we might imagine Alice Paul with her youth, more of a middle class reformer. We might be able to share why she was more ready to embrace these more radical strategies. Okay, I think I'm gonna end around here with some of these maps. I'm gonna give you guys another version of this map, but I wanted to show you the primary source version. It says the rights of the people, women are people. In case you forgot, state suffrage victory map. We've got full suffrage, mostly in the West, and as it moves east, it becomes less and less. Comparing that to this map, okay, this is like the real map, easier to read. You should notice a few things. As we move to the eastern seaboard, no voting by women. As we move out west, there is voting by women. So historians have always asked the question, why were some of the western states more open to women's suffrage before the eastern states? There's a few reasons why. A lot of it comes down to geography and culture. So number one, many of these western states are really sparsely populated. You should remember from like 12,000 years ago when we looked at the Three-Fifths Compromise and the Great Compromise that representation in Congress in the House of Representatives is based on, you got it, population. So in these sparsely, meaning less populated states, if the women were counted as voters, those states would get more representation. So it's not really like a moral argument, kind of a practicality thing here. In general, the West had been less tied to tradition, right? This was kind of the experimental side of America. There was also the populist movement that politicized many women as well. And in Utah, in particular, Mormons had supported women's suffrage so that they could vote in support of polygamy, which is a part of some aspects of the Mormon religion where people are allowed to have more than one wives. So some practical things here. A lot of it comes down to geography and culture. Okay, so that is the end of part 1 of this video lecture. Next up, we're going to look at Woodrow Wilson and the 19th Amendment. We've got Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty? I'm really excited. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. What you're going to do next, all 4 of my classes, you guys now should be going into the classroom to see what has been assigned to you. I would also recommend that you make sure that before you do anything, that you watch this Seneca Falls video for red and green. Okay, blue and yellow, you guys are going to have a whole separate video source through Edpuzzle. All right, and that's what we got for now. So I'm going to sign off and probably just go record the next part because I'm not going to pretend and change different outfits every time because it's Sunday and I got time and we're going to do it live. So that being said, peace.